Hey there, I'm Cody Nesper. This is the Legacy Project. Today we're going to be talking about the shame that comes with debt. And for those of you that have ever experienced this shame, it feels like, okay, Cody, what are you trying to tell me here? Of course I know there's shame. Exactly. What I want to talk about is maybe some pathways forward and some ways out of it, and even kind of call out some things that aren't working. Right? When it comes to debt, there's such an intrinsic shame, but there's also a collective and social shame regarding it. So the intrinsic shame that's affecting us it's that pressure, that anxiety that exists every single day, that awareness that you're living beyond your means and you don't know when the hammer is finally going to drop, right? When we're struggling with debt, we become slaves to our job because it's our place to be able to find the finances to pay for things we've already signed our name on the dotted line for. Debt is something that is so incredibly overwhelming when it's not managed. When there's no strategy, when there's no end game in here when it comes to debt, debt is absolutely crushing for the soul. And the really sucky thing is that whenever you go looking for support or for help, it's possible you find people who make getting out of debt sound sexy and everything, but then they put this extra pressure and anxiety on it as well. So, for example, a lot of the exposure that I've ever had to debt stacking or debt snowballing or getting out of debt or anything like that is with, what is his name? Dave Ramsey. For the love of Pete, why couldn't I think of that? So when you think of it, Dave Ramsey, if you've ever heard of him, never done the Dave Ramsey Project, it's incredible. He has changed so many people's lives to get them out of debt. But at the same time, he does it from this sense of debt is stupid and debt is not essential, and debt is really just a lack of wisdom and strategy going forward. And doing that, he beats into us this sense that there's something wrong with us because we've been engaging with debt. But I gotta tell you, there's nothing wrong with engaging with debt. The real problem that's going on here is that the shame that is inside is what weight we give to ourselves, what weight we're giving to our decisions in these matters. I mean, one of the things Ramsey touts is, hey, work forever and save to buy a house. Great. Don't have a mortgage. Great. Entry-level homes are starting at like $400,000 right now. A $400,000 mortgage, if you put 20% down, right? Which is $80,000, by the way. That is more than I make in an entire year. To accumulate that type of okay, let's just pause for a second. $80,000. At what rate do I have to save money to accumulate $80,000? If I was saving $2,000 a month for 4 years, it would take me 4 years to get there. Now I'd be closer to 100,000, but it would still take that much. Okay, so let's say 3. It put me at $72,000 if I saved $2,000 a month every single year. Can you raise your hand if you can save $2,000 a month right now on your salary? Okay, if you can, God bless you. More power to the people. Talk to me, DM me, help me understand what the heck I need to do differently. But the reality is that I'm not in circles with a whole hell of a lot of people who are saving $2,000 a month. And so that's just savings. Like, that's not even including investments or health insurance or blah. It seems like an impossible task. But if you bought a house at $400,000, assuming no inflation and no market rises are going to happen, that same $400,000 house is going to be $400,000 in 3 years. I'm going to put $80,000 down. Forget about closing costs, right? That's going to be a $320,000 mortgage. No renovations, no solar innovations, no nothing applied to it. That $320,000 mortgage in the state of Arizona is going to be about $2,000 a month in mortgage due to state taxes, property taxes, and due to mortgage. Well, actually, I wouldn't have mortgage insurance, but it would still be your mortgage payment plus state taxes every month. $2,000 is a whole heck of a lot of money when it comes to a mortgage. Well, actually, it's pretty cheap, but in comparison to my salary, that's a lot of money. That is right now, if we had a $2,000 mortgage and all the other expenditures that come with it, right? no solar, no renovations to make the house more efficient or function better. That is an extremely expensive mortgage that's going to have electricity tacked onto it, that's going to have all kinds of repair costs that are going to be necessary, because typically, by the way, when you buy a house, it's like a car, a used car. Expect it to break down. Expect things to be missed in the inspection. It's going to happen. And so that would be at like an upper range of our budget, and we make pretty good money. I don't know how people are able to dream or think possibility for the future when it comes to home ownership, which home ownership seems like, sometimes I think people approach home ownership as like an entitlement. I don't mean it as an entitlement. It's a security blanket, right? The point of having a mortgage or buying a house, and for anyone whose strategy is different than this, like you don't want to buy a house, that's great, it's phenomenal. There's tons of reasons to believe that owning a house is actually not an asset, but a liability because of its expenses and costs and things like that. But the reality of it is that it's a security blanket that you have somewhere to live that is not inflated by a market or by anyone else. It's purely, if you get a mortgage at, let's say, 20 years old, but if you live there all the way to the time you're 50, by the way, I'm not 20. I think anyone who can buy a house at 20 is incredible, but that's probably unrealistic. But if you bought a house at 20, lived there all the way till you're 50, paid it off by the time you're 50, you have beat 30 years of inflation, right? That house is going to grow in capital gains just because you've acquired it. But I'm digressing. His strategy is that you can live a life, Ramsey's strategy is that you can live a life without debt. And honestly, I think it's impossible. I think the entire American market, the entire Western market, is set up to leverage debt against consumers. Now, we keep swallowing the pill and consuming and consuming and consuming. So we got to own that as well. But the reality of it is that society is not built for us to be able to thrive without that debt. Think about your own market. Can you just, in the next 5 years, is it possible for you to save enough money in the next 5 years for you to be able to purchase a house in your market? Probably not. How about a car? Cool. How about a used car? There are different strategies you can take, absolutely. But the reality of it is that we're gonna need to work with debt. We have to be wise with it. We have to think of the end game. We have to use it every month strategically, not as an emergency. But we have to lift shame off of it. You're not stupid for having debt. You're not broken for having debt. You're not missing something because you're working with debt. The reality of it is that you're probably actually average. And you might be better than average. You might be more well off. We might need to tighten the belt on some stuff. We might need to come up with different strategies so that debt isn't crippling for you. But the reality of it is that debt's not shameful. It's necessary. Now socially there's a shame aspect of it as well. It's so crazy because I don't know about you, but I'm newly back to America. I was in Australia for a few years, long story, everything's great. My wife's Australian, it's the best. I'm glad to be home though. And whenever I drive around, I don't understand how people can afford the cars that they afford. I don't know how they can afford the houses that they can afford. It doesn't make any sense to me. But there's this pressure and this anxiety to be able to provide and to fit in and to create a standard level of living that is acceptable in your community or in your market or in your area. And the reality of it is that's crap. It's absolute baloney because it's selling you a lie that you have to become something better or different or important, and you can only achieve that by what assets you have available to you. And so what I'm here to say is that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. We can leverage it. We can use it to our advantage. We can beat inflation with it. We can think of the end at the beginning, and we can use it wisely. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about what using debt wisely looks like over the coming weeks. Come join one of our group chats. and talk about how to use debt wisely. Learn from some other people in our community in order to find out, hey, how are you using it? How are you growing credit? How are you growing, your ability to leverage debt, but to do it wisely? How are you strategizing around that? And let's figure out together. Let's lift that shame off of you that's telling you that you're not good enough because you are struggling or crippled by debt. Let's lift that shame off because you don't even have access to credit, because for whatever reason, in order to open a credit card, they need you to have credit. And most people at 18 haven't ever had credit. Let's lift that shame off that your credit score is less than perfect. I know mine is. I know my credit's less than perfect. I'm in the midst of a rebuild phase. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about and let's lift ourselves out of the muck and the mire of the things that are breaking us down. You are not what you have. You're so much more important than that. And I want to be here in that journey with you. I want to be available for you. So come join our Patreon channel, like our Patreon group. Come talk to us. Come engage with us. Let's talk about how to leverage debt well. Let's talk about wisdom. Let's talk about having the end in mind. And I hope that this has just been a taste of shame that can be lifted off of you. That you are so much more important. You're so much more valuable than just what credit score you have. That there's so much more opportunity for you than beyond the job you have that you hate, that you're stuck in because you have to make ends meet. I believe that there's a dream inside somebody listening right now who's going to find the courage to start that business or that venture that you've got. And you thought, maybe I need to make enough money so that I can set this venture aside. Well, maybe you just need to find the energy and the space to do it, and do it while you're also making ends meet at a job you don't love. And I'm here for it. I'm doing the same. Well, I kind of like my job, but but I hope you get the point. And so keep coming back, keep messaging me, keep engaging. Let's try and find a way to create that legacy for each and every one of us. What's your legacy going to look like? I hope it's bigger than you think. See you next time.